Now, defeating Islamic State will not end jihadist terrorism. That's according to a new report out this morning. It's warning there are as many as 15 hardline militias ready to replace IS in Syria alone. It comes just days after the UN Security Council agreed a roadmap for peace in the country. Well, I'm joined now by the former Lib Dem leader, Lord Campbell. He's in our Edinburgh studio, and a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Worrying stuff, isn't it? So I think we kind of knew this, didn't we, that even if IS in its current form is obliterated militarily, jihadism will remain.
I think we've got to accept that, and we've got to accept it for the foreseeable future. I mean, it's a bit like dragon's teeth, as it were. Every time you take the head off one body, others spring up. And, of course, that's why the proposals in the Security Council resolution you referred to a moment or two ago are so important. And maybe we'll discuss the extent to which they do or do not contain all the necessary ingredients in a moment. Nonetheless, it's very important that there should be a diplomatic political initiative going hand in hand with the military methods which are being used, in particular the bombing of ISIS.
Well, you've raised it. Let's discuss it right now. I mean, is it enough of a roadmap? There have been fine-sounding words and resolutions before. The issue, of course, with something as complex as Syria is making any of the diplomacy actually happen.
Oh, you're quite right. Remember, this is the second resolution. There was one a few weeks ago which used the expression all necessary means, which is normally used to indicate that military methods, military action can be used, but there was no express authority for that. The resolution which was passed a couple of days ago is, as you say, a roadmap, a framework. It's very ambitious. It imagines talks beginning in January. It imagines that democratic elections could be held within 18 months. And of course, the one thing which is almost staggering is the gap in any reference to Assad and the future of Assad, which of course has enormous importance in relation to Russia's attitude to these matters.
Absolutely. And, I mean, from Assad, I wanted to ask you about, where you stand on, even the Russian position or points in between. Is what happened in Libya and perhaps Iraq before it's a lesson for the future there, the pragmatic way forward, in that you remove the strong leader, the unpalatable, to say the least, leader, but then what happens is the Libyan situation, an awful vacuum into which all kinds of things flow. Should we get over the obsession in the short term about Assad?
Well, it was interesting. Philip Hammond, the Foreign Secretary, speaking at the United Nations Security Council debate just the other day, was very robust in his condemnation of Assad. But it's believed that the British government's position is that there should be a temporary role and no more than that. The Russians, on the other hand, take a much more pro-Assad position. I mean, remember that the Russians' attitude towards Assad is not out of any sense of friendship. It's in reference to their own particular interests. They want to maintain the naval base at Tartus in the Mediterranean and, of course, the military base which they've established at Latakia. And they then see, for the moment at least, that Assad is the most important factor in allowing them to continue that, and of course as a result to have influence, to have a seat at the top table, but to have influence in the outcome of the Middle East issues.
Well, what's your take on it? I mean, what's your assessment? What would end as much of the conflict as can be ended most quickly and stop, for instance, the terrible suffering of the people of Syria, the flow of refugees? If Assad said, right, I'm going next week, would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think it would take everyone by surprise if he were to say something of that kind. And in fact, I'm not sure the Russians would let him. And we have also to recognise that he enjoys very considerable support from Tehran, from the Iranian government. And indeed, there are Iranian forces at work on behalf of the Assad regime in Syria itself. Now, I think a phased withdrawal would almost certainly be the best possible outcome. But as has often been pointed out in relation to Syria, and again in the course of the last 2 or 3 days, look, there is no ideal solution here. What one's got to do is to try and get the best possible solution available. And I think some temporary role for Assad would be part of the stability which is necessary for transition. If he were to go, back to the point you made a little earlier, then that would create a vacuum which others might seek to take advantage of.
And I just wanted to ask you finally, while you're with us, Lord Campbell, I don't think we've spoken since you were ennobled, and congratulations on that. But your take then on this this issue of House of Lords reform and things like the over 80s being removed from it?
Well, I have to confess I'm 74, so perhaps I should declare an interest. My view is that the House of Lords should be 80% directly elected, and that there should be a balance of 20%, so that you can put in people with particular expertise, scientists, environmentalists, doctors, people of that kind. But the fact that I've joined the club doesn't mean that I don't think the club ought to be reformed.
Very well put. Min Campbell, Lord Campbell, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Indeed.
Thank you.